welcome the man himself, Simon Cowell MBE.
God, this is scary, guys. Too many people and too many faces I recognise, so we can either do it very loudly or quite quietly. Thanks very much for coming tonight. I was actually mixed feelings about tonight because I got a call from Anna Stribley, and if anybody knows Anna obviously better than I do, she scares the hell out of me. And I said, I can't really do it, Anna. Yes, you can. I said, yes, you can. So, because I'm here, and she said, well, I want you to come and talk to the Surrey Naturist Society. So I got quite excited at that. I thought, yes, this is well worth me going to talk to them. No, I can't say that because her husband's here, so I won't say that comment about Anna. So we're here. They've put me out to grass mainly now. I'm not allowed to do talks because I get notes from my PR guy. This is it, isn't it? You go to your PR guy and say, can you just give me some notes so I don't dry up tonight? And the very top of these notes, it says, don't offend anyone or be sexist. So he's got the measure of me quite well. So if I do offend people, please just yell at me and I will try and stop. We actually had a comment on we've got a big YouTube channel. I don't know whether anybody's ever seen it. And we've had 81 million views on it. And I think way on in quite recently, on one of the videos, Laurie's very good at cutting out. Laurie, stand up because you're the guy who makes me look good. Laurie and Abby are our media team, and Laurie came in and said, we've got a bit of a problem. He said, look, we got this video, but I can't really cut this one swear word out. So I said, well, leave it in, I don't care. Anyway, so he left it in, and we got all these comments saying, oh, I thought Simon was such a sweet guy. I've never heard him swear. Hands up all the Wildlife Aid people here tonight. Okay. Anybody heard me swear? Oh, yes. Okay. But, you know, sometimes I do it just because I'm frustrated. Laurie actually bought me a T-shirt quite recently because I get so angry at things. And it says on the front of it, emblazoned on the front, which I'm actually not allowed to take out the office, it said, it's not effing, so careful there, rocket science. Because, you know, what we do is not rocket science. A lot of it's common sense. We need people to take care of wildlife, and that's what we try and do. So Wildlife Aid's been there a long time. I've no idea what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. I shall keep an eye on the clock, that's about it. There's only one advantage, or probably two, of getting so old like I am. The first one is that when you stand up, you can't remember why you're there in the first place. So you let all these words out of your mouth, and when you sit down, you have absolutely no idea what you said. And there's a big advantage to that now, and I can get away with murder much more than I used to in my 40s. But I'd like to make this sort of Q&A. I'd like you to get you involved. So if you've got any questions, if any wildlife people ask me a question I don't know the answer to, you're fired immediately. Well, I pass it to Laurie because he's the scapegoat. So, you know, do feel free to interact. What we're going to do is chat. I've no idea, I mean this, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. It just sort of comes to me at the time. I just know that it's 5 minutes gone, I haven't had a cigarette, so I'm a bit like that at the moment now. We're going to show you a very short video, which just gives you a bit of the essence of Wildlife Aid, and also gives me, it's not even long enough for a fag break, is it really? No, it's not. So let's watch this video, guys, and then we can start talking, and you can ask any questions you like, put your hands up, and I will get to you very quickly. Laurie, it's over to you. I don't know what drives me to do it, to be honest. I mean, when I started Wildlife Aid, it was going to be a little hobby, no more. Now it's just obscenely huge. We deal with about 20,000 incidents a year, which is a huge amount. 1 minute you can be up a roof, next minute you can be up a tree, then you can be down a drain or down a manhole or in a sewer.
There's one just gone down there. Right. Got you. Where's the second? Oh, it's there.
I've had an antler penetrating the temple, middle of my eyes, antler going through my neck, not too far, I hasten to add, severe bite on arm by badger, 2 thumbnails crucified by a fox's teeth. Never sustained serious injuries at all, but that's just part of the work. You have to be very quick to improvise. Making sure he doesn't get snagged on anything as he comes up through. I mean, we carry quite a lot of kit, but for every rescue, the rescue equipment's different. I mean, once I went up a chimney, couldn't get a bird out, I had to borrow the lady's soup ladle. I bent that, put it on a long pole with gaffer tape. I mean, I think one of the funniest ones we've ever done was a snake in a person's garage behind a fridge. So we went out thinking it was going to be a grass snake and pick it up. And I sort of turned the fridge around, couldn't see very much, turned the fridge around a bit more, and there's a dirty great python wrapped around the motor of the fridge, obviously trying to keep warm because it was a cold day. And you know, that's when you sort of go, okay. When we started doing the trips, I mean, I just learned the thing that I think, it shouldn't have shocked me, but it did, is that all the problems that wildlife has worldwide are absolutely, there's one common denominator, and that's man. Different species in different countries, but actually the rescue techniques are much the same. We've worked with crocodiles, seals, baboons, monkeys, mountain gorillas were just stunning. We've done so much. I've been so lucky in what I've done. It's just such a great feeling. We've taken an animal that's going to die, we've made it well, and we've taken it back out to let it go for a second time. And it's indescribable, the joy I get from that. To me, I don't think I've made any sacrifices because it's what I wanted to do. A lot of people will tell you that I've sacrificed all sorts of things. It's not a sacrifice to me. I love what I do. I wouldn't change it for the world. So, you know, do I take a lot of holidays? Do I go out at weekends a lot? Am I on duty 24/7? Yeah. But it's my choice. I love it. Wouldn't change it for anything. I'm going to rescue forever. I'm not going to stop. So we started back in 1980 when all we had was our kitchen. It was meant to be a little hobby. I was working in London. I spent 23 years in London, hated every single day of it, but it earned me money. And I always believe in life that life takes you on a path that you need to be on to get to where you've got to go to. And if I hadn't have done London, I couldn't have done this. So there's method in the madness somewhere. That was the shed, wasn't it? My God. That was the shed. That was the second unit. We started in the kitchen, we then went to the shed. I don't even remember that now. I don't remember that thing. It's a bit nostalgic. I might start crying in a minute. It just grew. I mean, Wildlife Aid got bigger and bigger and bigger. We started to take in maybe 5 or 6 patients a week, and now we can take in up to 60 patients a day. So it's got mammoth, and I think not because we wanted it to, but because the need is there. I mean, everybody at Wildlife Aid thinks I don't do much, I just gallivant off around the world and see these amazing animals. And yeah, I've had that opportunity when we had SOS on the screens for about 16 years. It was pretty stunning to go abroad and see all these things, and we came down, actually Ricky Gervais, who you may have heard of, came down quite early on in the series, and he was coming down, we were chatting about something. And I've learned several things about filming, and one of the important things, if you swear on camera, they can't use it. So if something goes wrong, you just say a swear word, and then they've got to cut it out and you're safe. So Ricky Gervais came down, and he asked me a question about what hedgehog spines were made of, and I said the wrong thing. I think I said chitin or keratin or something I shouldn't have said. So I just said, oh, fuck, the word that starts with F and ends with K, thinking I'm safe. But with that, he turned straight down and looked down the camera lens and went, Simon Cowell is just like David Attenborough with Tourette's. And it was such a funny comment, we couldn't not use it. So that stayed in there, and that was the start of my Tourette period, which has been going on for many, many years. It's mainly caused by having to work with Laurie and the media team and Alice and all the other people who support Wildlife Aid. They just drive me nuts. I mean, you know, you cannot get the staff. You cannot get them but by God, I couldn't do without every single one of them. They are brilliant. So all you wildlife aid volunteers and the team, it works because of you. I actually should have been at an award ceremony tonight. I didn't know much about it until about 2 weeks ago, and suddenly my PR guy said, you've got to go and have dinner there. I said, I can't go. He said, why? I said, I'm giving a talk. He said, well, just cancel it, do it another time. So I said, well, you ring up Anna Stribley, because I'm not going to. So he rang up Anna Stribley and came back to me and said, okay, we've sorted that, Simon, you're doing the talk. So he's gone off to this award ceremony where we've won, I think we've won Charity of the Year for Eagle Radio or something. So he's gone to collect that for me, and I'm stuck here with you lot. And I know where I'd rather be. Award ceremony being nice to people, that's just not in my nature. So that was our second hospital. It was an 8x10 shed, which actually I built. You can see that from how wonky it is. And that's where it all started. And it was just going to be a little hobby for me to do at weekends to sort of unwind from the stress of the city. Always wanted to work with animals. Always wanted to be a vet. Far too thick. Academically very challenged. So would never have been a vet. So I thought, well, how can I get back to what I love doing, and that's animals? So I thought, I know what. I'll start a wildlife charity. If they ask me that again now, I'm not sure I'd do it again. It's been a fun ride. It's been an emotional ride sometimes. But right at the end of the talk, you'll see what the next phase in our life is. We became a charity in 1987. And from there, it just mushroomed, really. We started off, it was sort of like getting 5 patients in a day. So you get a volunteer in, you get another few patients, you get a second volunteer in. Our volunteer workforce now is about 350. We always need more, as Alice will tell you. Alice, just take a little stand up. I know you hate this. I'm sorry, but you have to stand up. Because this girl, if you blinked, you might have missed it, but that was Alice. I've never known a team who works so bloody hard. They're so dedicated and trying to get volunteers in. I can sit at my desk and say, Alice, why haven't we got enough volunteers in? I don't want excuses, just get me more volunteers in. And the poor girl, I mean, she's sometimes I drive her to distraction, but she did. I was rather concerned the other day. She came in to me and said, you can't fire me anymore. I said, why? She said, I've been here 2 years. Doesn't seem a day over 20 years to me. But she said, I've been here 2 years, so now it's much more difficult to fire her. So I've got to be far more inventive in the future. But we work as a team. I mean, it only works. I love what I do. I mean, I whinge about it every single day, as I'm sure the volunteers here, but I would not change it for the world. It's very cohesive. We do a lot of rescues, which is that's what rocks my boat, floats my world, whatever you want to call it, more than anything else, is the rescues, because you go into dangerous situations or impossible situations, and if you don't rescue that animal, it is going to die. I don't think as yet we've never come out. Oh, now this is an interesting one. We went to this guy's house. The house, I hasten to add, was on St George's Hill. It was worth £17 million. And he said, there's a manhole. There's a manhole over there. The cover's off. The fox gone down. Do it. So thank you. Thank you. Nice man. I thought a big donation will be all right. Big donation will be all right. So anyway, we crawled down to the bottom of the manhole with all the sort of human excretia sort of going between my legs. I was a bit worried that I just got incontinent, but luckily it was coming out the house. And we got the fox out. The guy, meantime, had wandered off into his house, so I was going to give him a leaflet saying thanks very much, and he's going to be very grateful. And he sort of turned and walked away. We got the fox, let the fox go. It was a rescue release, which is my favourite type of thing. And he said, by the way, don't forget to put the manhole back when you go. Thank you very much. Thanks for the donation, guys. I felt like going to get the fox back and shoving it down the manhole again. But rescues we get are sometimes very tricky. I don't know what Laurie's got. He's probably got a selection. Oh, look, he's typing away. That was probably one of our most interesting ones. And again, this is thinking on your feet. It's not rocket science. You've just got to think like the animal. You've got to think what you can do. So that little fox cub has got its head stuck in a tyre, in a rim. It obviously saw something on the other side, wanted to eat it, head gone through, screwed. It ain't going to get out of that. So we brought it back. We just sort of sat and looked a bit. And even if you knock the fox out, it's still, it's not going to help that much. So we had the bright idea of rolling up a sort of a tube of plastic, just like, like rolling up a bit of A4 paper, it goes into a tube. We then put the tube over the fox's head, then obviously point of load, which some of you gentlemen and ladies might understand point of load, it spreads the point of load, and we could just pull the cub's head back through the wheel. And it was actually very simple. For cameras, we made it take 3.5 hours to make it look really difficult. But no, I mean, it took a time, but he got out of that and he was released straight away. It's absolutely great. But you see an instance like that, that animal would have died if we couldn't have saved it. And you do, so I get quite cross really, because we see a lot of rescues when the fire brigade go out. Anybody from the fire brigade here first? Before I put my foot right in it up to my elbow. They go out and they've got their big cutters and they cut fences and gates off and drill through that, and sparks going everywhere. Again, with a deer in a fence, you can do the same principle. You put a sheet down each side of the fox and you can extract the fox from the fence without having to do anything difficult. That's nearly the right picture, but it's not quite the right picture, Laurie, is it?
There isn't a fence one, so it's close enough.
No, it's not good enough for me, Laurie. Get that one in there next time. Deer in fences are quite frequent. They tend to sort of get panicked very easily. In fact, I think the worst bit of hard work is this week, I think twice we've been out and had to shoot deer because they get attacked by dogs, and they get their rumps absolutely ripped apart, and there's no way you can get them back out to the wild again, so that's all quite sad for us. But we're there to prevent suffering. My idea for that is to prevent suffering by getting the animal better, not by putting it to sleep, but sometimes, sadly, that is the only answer. That's all you can do. And I'd rather an animal not suffer at all than have it with sort of 1.5 legs missing in a zoo. If anybody wants to ask me a question about zoos tonight, please be prepared to sit here till about midnight, because I will just go off on one. Animals should be in the wild. Wildlife needs to be in the wild. We're in a desperate state. I mean, here we are in 2018. I've got to have to read this now, so I've got memory like a sieve. We've got 1 in 5 British animals, and I'm looking entirely the wrong page. So just talk amongst yourselves for a couple of minutes. There we are. I did it in bigger print. So 1 in 5 species of British wildlife is under threat of extinction. Not just, going down a bit, but extinction. That's appalling. The planet's been here for what, 5 billion years about, give or take a little bit? We've been on the planet for about 200,000 years, and in our present state, much less than that. But we've done all the damage, really, in the last 200. When I was born, just before I was born, I hasten to add, in 1950, there are estimated to be 30 million hedgehogs in the UK. The hedgehog surely has got to be our most iconic British mammal. And the nice thing about it, it's totally uncontroversial. If you talk about foxes, some people hate them. Talk about badgers, some people hate them. Hedgehog, everybody's friend, including the gardener's friend. 30 million of them. Absolutely great. How many are there now? Less than 1 million. That's a 96% decline in population in 60 years. And that's just one of the species. We are in so much trouble, and we've got to try to turn it round. The other day, actually last week, Chris Packham did the Walk for Wildlife, which I'm so proud to say a lot of our team were at, and I thank them. I was a lazy bastard, I didn't go. I had too much to do, and I did actually. But it was a great start. We need to get people to stand up and be counted. We need to take care of our wildlife. We try not to get into politics tonight, because I shoot a lot of them. But there again, I shoot half the human race anyway, because we need to sort of deplete. I did a talk a while ago, and I could get myself into a dangerously similar situation tonight, because we were chatting, and I was getting some Q&A, and people said, well, what are we going to do? I said, well, either there'll be a plague, or something will happen, or something will go that. They said, suppose nothing happens. I said, we've all got to offer to die at 50. Now, I was at the time over 50. Everybody in the room was over 50. 5 people walked out. So they obviously enjoyed my talk. But it's true. I mean, we've got to do something. We need to somehow limit population, but we all know that no Prime Minister or no government is going to bite that bullet until they really have to. It will happen. But wildlife is under threat, and I think people forget that we need an intact food chain to survive. If the food chain breaks, we're in trouble. I don't know whether anybody's seen all the news of bees over the last few years. They've been quite heavily in the press. And now in China, and the only way they can fertilise their fruit trees is they literally send kids out into the field with paintbrushes to paint the pollen from one tree to another so they get fruit. There's no bees left because of all the neonicotinoids, and I had to practice that word for 5 hours every time I put that. Neonicotinoids. Now I've got it wrong again already. So we are doing tremendous damage and we've got to realise it. But sadly, the farmers want pesticides and they're not prepared to listen, but they'll suffer as much as everybody else in the end. So we've got to take care of it. Your group obviously does an awful lot. You obviously care, for which I thank you as well, but I'm sure you don't really need my thanks for that. But we need to take care of our wildlife. So somewhere along the line, somebody's got to stand up and be counted, and we've got to keep the food chain intact. I think the thing I find running a wildlife charity, British wildlife isn't sexy to most people. And they say, oh, I sponsor this, I sponsor that. I mean, there's some wildlife artists, some wildlife artists in this country, and, all you can get them to paint is the exotics. And I'm standing right in front of a man who is probably, without doubt, the best wildlife artist in the world today. Stand up, Mr. Simmons.
Sorry, let me just give you £50 now.
50 quid now, thank you. He's brilliant. Go onto his website, buy some of his wildlife work, it's brilliant. But what do people buy? Tigers, elephants, gorillas, all the sexy big stuff. And what people don't realise, if we lose the lower end of the food chain, the bottom end of the food chain, there won't be any sexy big stuff. What did you pay for? Is it a badger or a hedgehog or something? You did a few. Badger. Nobody bought it. I had to buy 5,000 copies of his bloody picture of a badger, so he didn't whinge at me. But that's the trouble we have. People think, oh, I'm sponsoring wildlife, I'm helping wildlife. They're helping the exotic creatures, and actually the exotic creatures need the lower end of the food chain just as much as we do and the planet does. But we need to try to keep this message going. Packham's Walk for Wildlife started it off. We've got some big things going on, which you'll see right at the end of the video, but two big projects. One is a new centre which will become known to you shortly, and another one's something to try to encourage school children to do something. Because if you think about it, it doesn't take much to save wildlife. You could pick up a rubber band, you could pick up a broken bit of glass, you could make sure your fences are protected so animals can't get stuck in them. Simple. Takes you no time to check it out, no time to do it, but it probably will save a wild animal. That's the back end of a hedgehog. Well timed, Mr. Brayley. Something simple like that. If you can't even pick the can up and put it somewhere, just stamp on it, not with the hedgehog in it, I hasten to add. Stamp on the can so nothing else can go in it. It's little things like that. Now, if you take everyone in the country and everybody did one action a day, picked up a rubber band or something simple, it can be more difficult. You could actually build a section for wildlife or do something to attract wildlife. That alone, if everybody did one thing a day in the UK, that would be 29 billion actions a year. It's staggering and scaring. And I did get the number checked by somebody who was good at maths, but that's the number of actions it would be. And if we all did that, I think we all sort of look at the environmental problem and say it's too big for us. Trouble is, governments are saying it as well, which scares the living daylights out of me. And we won't get onto oceans either. Don't get me to talk about oceans tonight. But we think we can't make a difference. But if everybody did one thing a day, then it will, without doubt, make a huge difference. Hedgehog habitat is disappearing. They reckon hedgehogs will be extinct in 2025. Personally, I don't think they will, but I think we will have urban extinction of the hedgehog by 2025 because we have taken away all of their habitat. There is nothing left. The only way they can get from garden to garden is if we cut a hole in the fence. Very simple. Let's do it. Because all wildlife is having to come into an urban environment now, and obviously we put it under massive threat. We go out to a huge number of RTAs. It's sometimes deer, it's sometimes badger, it's sometimes owls. In fact, most of our veterinary work, apart from the bits and pieces, if you look at why we get an animal in, it's either going to be an eye problem where it's been hit by something or got into trouble, or it's going to be a bone problem because it's been crunched by something. So orthopedics and ophthalmology for us are probably the two biggest things we have to deal with. We've got a brilliant team of vets. They're good at both. And, without them, we would be absolutely stuffed as well. But we do have a very strict ethos. A lot of centres don't have a stricter ethos as us, and that is they will sort of put something out or put it in a cage for the rest of its life. And that I just can't abide. I think a wild animal should be in the wild. It'd be rather like one of us spending the rest of our lives living in a telephone box. Literally, never going out, just being in a telephone box. Personally, I'd rather be dead. especially if it was my mother talking to me on the phone. Actually, not quite true, because she's dead, so it would be a hell of an expensive phone call. Yeah, I've got to be careful of that one. So yes, wildlife needs protecting. Your group obviously enjoys it and loves it. We have to keep spreading the word. Everybody's got to take this on board, especially the kids. We've left our kids with the most impossible task. I'm sure they'll rise to it. In fact, I think there is a big upswing over the last 5 years where kids are beginning to take a better interest. If you can get them away from their iPads and their whatever pads and their games and their bleh, just spend an hour. Just go out for 1 hour and look at wildlife. Amazing. Trouble is, see, you're all smiling now. Trouble is, we're all so bloody old that we know the answers. How do you get the young kids to know the answers as well? That's the big problem. We appreciate it, but it's trying to get the young involved. When I started Wildlife Aid, I thought I'd get to about 50. There'll be so many people wanting to take my place that it'll be easy. There'll be lots of people coming on board. We have volunteers, they give up a lot of time, but nobody will give that absurd commitment to it. I mean, we are on call 24/7, and that means Laurie's on call 24/7. Poor Laurie, because most of the things we actually film. And it's manic commitment. He doesn't know it yet, but he'll probably be the next rescuer when my body won't do it anymore. My mind's willing. I got on a rescue the other day. A fox had ducked under a 6-foot fence, so I'd done this for 40 years, jump over the fence, collect fox. Anybody remember Tom and Jerry? I got to the fence, and my body just slid down it. Because the brain went, I can do that. Body goes, you have got to be joking. You know, I go over a 4-foot fence now. I have to lift my legs up with my hands to get it over the fence. Did anybody recognise that? Yeah. Am I the only one? Yeah. See? We're very old. It's very sad. Why aren't people looking after us? That means you, Simmons, because you're young. You know, you should be painting hedgehogs and badgers and British wildlife, making people realise, not tigers and elephants. They are brilliant. I mean, the iconic creatures are brilliant, but they do rely on all the stuff at the lower end. That's a rescue we did a few years ago. Again, you've got to think on your feet, because there was a fox. It was about 40 feet off the ground. It had obviously jumped from a car park, which is this side of the picture, onto that balcony. But obviously, because of the netting and everything else, it couldn't jump back. So if you go too close, the fox is going to jump, because it's not going to realise it's not safe not to jump, and it's going to kill itself. So what do? Fox looked at us, we looked at the fox. It was a bank behind there, which is why they've got all the bars in the windows. And this was a nightmare. You went into the bank, can we please come into your bank to rescue a fox that's going to die unless you let us go? No. Security, security. I said, this fox is going to die. Sorry, security, security. I said, okay, if you don't let me rescue this fox and it dies, I'm going to the press. Oh, well, you better come this way then. So we snuck in that room there, we got in there eventually, we opened the window, we stood back, fox goes through window, shut window down, fox contained. You just got to think and work it out how to do it for the best. So that was quite fun. Give me another shot I can talk to, Laurie. Okay, so football nets. Who've got grandchildren, children, great-grandchildren or anything else? Football nets, tennis nets, fruit netting. Please, please be careful with it. Fruit netting, start it 2 feet above the ground. Football nets, when you finish with them, lift them 2 feet off the ground or something, because we get hundreds of calls every year for animals trapped in football nets, fruit netting, tennis netting, all sorts of things, even bits of chicken wire. The other horrendous thing for hedgehogs, and a lot of gardens have got it nowadays, is chain link fencing. Who's got a garden with chain link fencing? God, you're such a load of goody-goodies. Has nobody got chain link fencing? Oh yes, you're a guilty one. I'm terribly sorry. Always check that. In the seasons when hedgehogs are about, they might not be the brightest creatures. They get their head through the chain link fence. Obviously the body doesn't go through the chain link fence, and they will die because they'll get stuck there. So just check chain link fences, walk around it very quickly, once or twice, you know, every couple of days. Make sure you haven't got a hedgehog stuck, because we do so many of those as well. Chain link fencing is a bit of a nightmare for hedgehogs. All these little hazards, just think before we do things, because the hazards are there and they can be so easily avoided. People care. People love wildlife. Let's just spread the word and do what we can. The hospital does its best. We do work 24/7. We obviously staff the hospital from 9 in the morning until 10 at night, or sometimes midnight when it's in the busy season. And then, you get these mad staff who work all day. They work ridiculous hours. Then they go and do a volunteer shift, and then they take the animals home. Alice, Sarah, Carol, stand up. Very brief, but she did. Nutter. She's a nutter. Works all day, volunteer shift in the evening, then goes home at night and feeds everything all night. Her poor husband is like a skeleton now. They thought he had anorexia, but he's actually a skeleton. She never feeds him. She's never there. It's an absolute nightmare. Orphan feeding is very, very time-consuming. Not so much for the birds, but certainly for the mammals, because the very little is, be it whatever they are, it's just about every 2 hours, right through the night. And by the time you've taken 3 or 4 squirrels home, or 3 or 4 fox cubs, it's feeding it, toileting it, which is a matter of getting a bit of tissue paper, licking it, wiping it on its parts to make it wee. And I actually watched one night. There's one volunteer came in, she was so tired. She's absolutely automated, feed it, lick it, toilet it, and then she got the same bit of thing, feed it, never lick the lick that's been licked. Keep your licking to a once-off only. I'm just worried that they go home and feed their husbands, and when they've finished eating, they try to toilet them. I'm sure it happens. There's a whole new series in that, and that alone. But they're all very cute. They all have to have a special diet. They all have to be fed very carefully. You can't just ram food in until the animal explodes. So there's a lot of science to it. There's a lot of work. We often change formulas because we find a better one. And as I say, it is incredibly time-consuming. We will take over this winter, probably. We will take through 200 hedgehogs. Hedgehogs have two broods a year. One of them is about now. We'll be getting hedgehogs out of that sort of size very shortly and over the next couple of months. Hedgehogs are a bit stupid as well, really, because the second brood very seldom make it through the winter, because if a hedgehog doesn't get to 600 grams by the time it hibernates, it will still hibernate absolutely fine, but it hasn't built up enough body fat to come out of hibernation the other side. So we will get hundreds probably of hedgehogs in between now and probably beginning of December, and we cannot let them go to sleep. So, it's amazing how much cost comes in there. Obviously, there's all the drugs and everything else, and we have to keep the temperature of these buildings at 60 to 62 degrees, so everything has to be air conditioned. And this summer, thank God we put air conditioning in last year, because it got so hot in all our pens. Luckily, we spent about 20,000 quid on air conditioning, so we can keep things hot in the winter and keep them cool during the summer, which is very important. So we'll have probably 200 hedgehogs. They will come in any time from now and go back out April, May next year. Those 200 hedgehogs will eat their way through 15,000 cans of dog food. That is not an exaggeration, it is true. 15,000 cans. I have been desperately for the last 5 years trying to find a method of marking hedgehog poo. We could make so much money. But that's what they'll eat, so that's very expensive. And as I say, we keep them for about 150 days, most of them, something like that. But we then got one of our other mad administration people. She's absolutely nuts. I can say that because she's not here tonight. I said, Helen, if you had 200 hedgehogs and you take in the mortality rates and all the other things you have to take in, how many hedgehogs would that be if they all bred as they normally do and they lose some and win some, whatever, in 10 years? 3.5 months later. Poor girl had 37 pages of calculations. But you worked out, you see, that those 200 hedgehogs will go back out to the wild, and we think we've saved 200, but actually the population from those 200 hedgehogs alone should be in 10 years' time 39,000. So little things work. It's like when we ring another centre and give a bit of advice. It's not the animal you're particularly saving then, which is obviously important to us, but it's the fact that they can go on and reproduce later on. Luckily, my reproduction days are over. We won't go too deeply into that subject because Laurie gets very scared when I go into that. I'll go anywhere on this talk. If you're brave, I'm very brave. Richard's promised to floor me with some of the questions later on. He's so going to regret it because I've got so much on him, he'll never win. Has anybody got any questions? If I go whizzing on anymore, has anybody got any questions? Because I quite like sort of Q&A because we can talk about stuff together. Yes, young sir, talk very loudly for us.
Young sir, just made my day.
Well, there you are. I like to make everybody's day. It just means when you die and you leave a legacy, it'll be to Wildlife Aid. See, I get that in somewhere. It always has to get in there. Yes, sir.
What is your opinion on feeding urban foxes?
Feeding urban foxes. I personally don't think we should. The reason we've got urban foxes is twofold. One is they're losing habitat, which is obviously that's not their fault, that's our fault. But we are making a food source dead easy for them. I mean, some of us will go down to Lidl to shop. Some of us will go to Tesco's to shop, and others go to Waitrose. We're able to go into a shop, buy what we want, eat what we want, thank you very much, we pay for it and off we go. Foxes don't have that convenience. They have to eke out an existence from an ever-decreasing amount of food that they eat, and they have to live in an urban environment. Should we feed urban foxes? The only time I would say you feed an urban fox is if it's really ill or something's going on, you might give it a bit of supplementary feed for a couple of weeks max to get it back on its feet again. In the winter, sometimes happens. In fact, I was looking at something on Twitter this evening, and it says that we're in for 4 months of the coldest winter we've had for about the last 30 years. So I just want to warn all my staff now, when that happens, I will be hibernating. I do not like the cold. I will be in bed with my electric blanket on. Laurie will be doing all the rescues and filming them. But yeah, so should we feed urban foxes? No. Should we leave them an easy source of food? No, we shouldn't. We should make sure things are secure. They wouldn't then come into urban areas because they'd have to find food from outside of our areas. And on top of that, if you feed a fox too much or any animal too much, it gets reliant on it. It gets lazy. It'll forget after a few generations, it will actually forget how to hunt probably. So we're doing a disservice. I don't believe feeding anything when it doesn't need feeding. I wouldn't feed the birds in the summer. I know we all love to see them on our bird feeders, but there's plenty of food out there in the summer. In the winter, they might well need it. And if we get what they're saying this year is 4 months of really cold, heavy snow and weather, then yes, they're going to need a lot of help. So before we kick off talking again, let's just show you this big thing, what I was talking about earlier after 38 years. This is our new project. When I started thinking about it and dreaming it up about 7 years ago now, I thought I was so clever and inspired, and over the last 2 years I've just decided it was just insanity, no inspiration at all. So this is what we hope the future will look like.
The reality is that this is a ticking time bomb, and it's a real life crisis right now in the United Kingdom. 1 in 7 of all wildlife species are at risk of extinction, and more than half of all wildlife is in decline. If we do not take action right now, then the biodiversity we know and love, the British countryside we know and love, the very existence of habitats that we take for granted are in peril. It's not just important, it's actually vital.
Probably over 37 years, rescued just about everything from everywhere that you could ever imagine.
The objective of wildlife aid over the last 38 years has been to rescue, rehabilitate as many British wild animals as possible. It's been run in Leatherhead for nearly 4 decades now. They respond to 20,000 incidents every year, which is phenomenal.
Good afternoon, Wildlife Aid Foundation. There's a badger in the middle of the drive. It doesn't look very well. I've just seen a fox in a really bad way. It looks like a little cub, but it's got a big cut on its face.
It's a baby deer. I think both his legs are broken, his back legs.
We're a centre of excellence in our field. The knowledge of the treatment of wildlife that we've ascertained is through sheer experience.
Wildlife aid is there to rescue the animal, rehabilitate the animal, and release the animal.
And I can tell you from personal experience, there is no greater feeling than fixing a wild animal and seeing that wild animal go back to its natural habitat to have a normal quality of life.
We've saved well over 100,000 animals in our existence.
Those individuals have gone on to breed and reproduce generation after generation. But animals just don't get into trouble in Surrey. It's everywhere. There are so many places in the UK that need our help too. What's currently happening when people are rescuing wild animals, whether that be from the road or built up areas, even their houses, they're taking them, as one would naturally assume, to their vet.
A conservative estimate is that 170,000 wild animals arrive at commercial veterinary practices in need of help every year, and a fairly large percentage of those animals are euthanised. So if the vets knew what to do, that would immeasurably help the outcome for that animal.
There's a gap in knowledge, there's a gap in awareness. I mean, the reality is that in most undergraduate courses, there's a limited time frame within which you can learn about wildlife care. They have different physiological needs than it will be with a cat or a dog. And therefore, I think it's really important that vets and veterinary nurses and other veterinary professionals have appropriate training. And that's exactly what the Wildlife Aid Foundation are trying to do, build an infrastructure for the medical care and for the rehabilitation care of these extraordinarily important creatures.
So what we need to do is take our knowledge and give it to people who can take it to their area and repopulate their areas. And then suddenly, saving a few thousand animals becomes a few million animals.
We need to inspire people to understand what we do, why we do it, and then to take up the cause. So in order to teach veterinary professionals, we need a larger and far more specialised facility. A couple of years ago, we were left the most amazing legacy of £1 million. This enabled us to go out and purchase 20 acres of land, and it's only half a mile away from where we are now. We spent a long time developing the plans, deciding exactly what we wanted. These plans were then presented to local government and approved, and now they've been backed by national government too.
Chairman, the work of the Wildlife Aid Foundation is absolutely wonderful. However, they are working in very outdated and cramped conditions, and they badly need more space in which to work. The site could become a vibrant hub of nature. The ponds would attract all manner of birds, and a chance for the public to see these and understand their habitat. It's an opportunity, I think, not to be missed. The need for an educational facility is so important. School children are appallingly ignorant of the fantastic wildlife we have in the UK. The wildlife survey was carried out recently, and out of 2,000 adults, more than a fifth did not know that a red kite was a bird, nor could they identify a sparrow or even a barn owl, and a large proportion had never set eyes on a hedgehog.
When we've raised the funds, the whole operation will move from the existing site to the new site, which will allow us to do everything we've done in the past, the rescue, the rehab and the release, but it'll allow us to go so much further. And I feel, having got Wildlife Aid where it is after 37 years, I have a massive responsibility to make it continue after I've gone. I want to leave a legacy that works, that can be built on in generations to come. So I owe it to the animals, I owe it to the volunteers, I owe it to the future. There is a way of rebalancing the situation which we need to understand and deal with. If somebody came in here who didn't know what it was about, I think I'd just say one thing to them really, and that's be here for a day and tell me it hasn't made a difference. So that's our dream for the future. I think that started to be forming in my mind when I went abroad, when we were doing SOS, and we went abroad quite a lot of the time for half the series to see situations all over the world. It became so apparent so quickly that although the species are different, the cause for their problem was always 99% mankind. And to try to address that, we need to inspire this generation, this younger generation, to do something about it. I think they're already starting to, but they need to do something about it so we can take it forward. So this centre, which is only actually half a mile away from where we are now, will address all those issues. As far as I know, and I might be corrected, it's the first of its kind to address all three issues in one place. So that is to have a veterinary hospital for domestic creatures, a wildlife hospital for wildlife, an education centre for all ages, all groups, and CPD courses for veterinary professionals, as well as an area for wildlife to live in. So this is our dream. It's the most insane dream. We have bought the land, I hasten to add. It's taken us about 5 years to buy the land and another 5 years to get the planning permission. That was a bit of a nightmare. But now we've got to build it. So if anybody wins the lottery this weekend, try to remember this talk today, and we'll name it after you, providing you can give us a cheque for £8.5 million. It's a huge amount. That was a lot of laughter there. Yeah, George, I've told you not to bring your wife, didn't I? It's a massive amount of money. To be honest, if everybody in Surrey gave us £1, we'd have it built. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a small amount of money, but it's a huge amount of money. And I think we need to protect our wildlife. I mean, you have got organisations like WWF who protect wildlife all over the world. We live in England. Let's think of home first. Let's, family first. Let's deal with our British wildlife. And if we can inspire children to take up the cause, there's a fact on there saying that one university worked out that about 170,000 wild animals were taken into vets every year, and most of those were euthanized. I actually think that figure's crap. Trouble is, I have no papers to prove it, but we did a lot of workings out. I reckon the figure of wildlife taken into vets is nearer 1 million animals a year, and of that million, probably over 70% are killed, because vets have a duty of care to stop suffering, and for a vet to deal with it, it's just going to put it to sleep. That's very simple. What we're saying to vets is please liaise with wildlife hospitals, because if you ring us up, we will take that animal from you. We're not asking you to spend thousands of quid on anything. What we're saying is rather than put it to sleep, give it to a wildlife hospital who will take over its care. We get a lot of calls from vets, a lot of patients brought in from vets, and sometimes what they've done to these animals is horrendous. We were having a chat about it this afternoon because, you'll put something in a cage, leave it for a couple of days and then think about taking it to wildlife hospital, it's going to die. And we've got a big black book, which is very scary, probably will publish after both Alice and I have died, of all the vets who have made the most amazing cock-ups. Not because they intended to, but because they didn't know, they're ignorant about it. On a veterinary course in the UK, which is about 5 years long, they spend about 1.5 hours on wildlife of a 5-year course. We want to change that. We want vets to work closely with wildlife hospitals. We want to provide, you put me right off now, you're good to do it. We want to provide care, and we came up with vets, we put that out to vets, and it's just wild. All they've got to remember is that if a vet takes in an animal, know their nearest wildlife centre. Secondly, get as much information about the animal and circumstances that you can. The location, that's the vital bit. So many people take a hedgehog in, and we do get that hedgehog, and it does come into the hospital, and we want to put it back where it came from. Oh, I don't know. It's so simple. It takes 2 minutes, if that less than that probably, to get the right information. So if anybody's thinking of being a vet, just remember the acronym WILD, and we can try to make a difference. But I think this new centre will. I'm hoping that we can, we're going to have very regular CPD courses for all groups and ages, and I think the idea is to inspire children to take notice, not try to educate them, because education is a pretty scary word when you've just spent 18 years doing it at school. let's inspire them to sort of make a difference and care about it. So it's desperately important to us. But this centre, I hope, will start to make a massive difference, and I hope people will be inspired by it. We will certainly be a referral centre, so if anybody gets a wild animal in any vets or anywhere, they can ring us up, they can know how to treat the animal, they can know what drugs to use for that animal, or they can just take it to their nearest wildlife centre, which is obviously another way around. We obviously can't go all over England and bring them back there, but we can advise people on what to do. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Do you talk to or compare notes with other wildlife hospitals?
Yes, we do. I mean, when I worked in London for 23 years, you had to read the book to find out about my life, because some of it's interesting, some of it's dead boring. No, it's not boring, really. It's quite interesting. We do talk. In fact, when I left London after 23 years, which I hated every day of my life in London, I thought, oh, thank God I'm out of the bureaucracy of the corporate world. The charity world is no better. So you're out of the frying pan into the fire. We do talk, we do liaise. I mean, about 10 years ago, I tried very hard to get all the wildlife hospitals to amalgamate, become one big cooperative, because I thought, you know, instead of everybody having to have a fundraiser, everybody having to have media, you could club it all together and actually you'd have much more impact. I mean, Chris Packham's walk, he pulled 10,000 people together, probably because of social media. It's made a big difference, social media. It shouldn't be underrated, but you can get the groundswell, you get the people thinking about it. So, what was I talking about then? What was your question?
Cooperating with other...
Oh yes, that was the one. Sorry, it's Alzheimer's and incontinence and everything's happening all at once here. There is cooperation between some, most. I'm sure we all think all the other centres do it wrong. I'm probably the worst in the world for sort of poo-pooing every other centre because I don't think they do it right. Our ethos, as I said earlier on, is very strict. A lot of centres will let things live that will never fly again if they've got wings, or will never walk again if they've got legs. We are very strict. That animal should be in the wild. We'll do anything to get it back to the wild. I mean, a lot of centres still amputate hedgehogs' legs. You know, hedgehog, everybody thinks like you'd do your pet dog who's fine on 3 legs. A hedgehog isn't. A hedgehog needs 4 legs to survive. If they lose a back leg, they can't scratch their ear, they get a mite infestation, and we've just seen it hundreds of times. And that hedgehog then gets a mite infestation, it then gets maggots, it then dies the most horribly slow, painful death. Where we can, we do orthopedic surgery on these creatures, and you know, it's expensive, it's time consuming, but we can mend a hedgehog's leg in a lot of cases, and it will go back out on 4 legs. But people still don't think correctly, and they amputate a leg thinking they've done the right thing. It's actually setting a very dangerous precedent and not right for the animal at all. But yes, we do cooperate to a degree, and I'm hoping that cooperation is going to get greater and greater and greater, but I hope more that the cooperation between vets and wildlife centres gets far greater as well. Thank you so much for listening. We're always available for advice and help. We've got a website, we've got YouTube videos and everything else as well. So stay in touch with us, get us lots of volunteers. Alice will love you to pieces. And I say thank you very much, and I should be tucked up in bed, but I might have just one Bacardi before I go to bed. Thank you so much.